first thing to know about Ryan was that Ryan was originally not going to be Ryan. He was going to be Ranger. And so I had looked around and I thought, what would be a strong male child name? And I found in a book, some child naming book, that Ranger was a valid child's name, a male's name. So I convinced Latricia that, Ranger would be a good name, like a Forest Ranger or a Texas Ranger or some strong male sort of role model. And I actually had convinced her to do that, but unfortunately we worked in the same office together, and somehow it got around the office that we were going to name him Ranger Buck, and once it moved from Ranger to Ranger Buck, it was all over. So we are here today not just to celebrate Ryan Raffety, but also to celebrate Ranger Buck.
I remember Ryan's first Christmas. I was so excited because I got him this really cool toy. It was this little cow, and it would move, and then it would go moo, moo, and I was so excited. And when we opened it up for him, he was laying on the floor, and his face was up, and the cow moved, and then it went moo, moo, and all of a sudden Ryan was like looking at it, and his face became kind of distorted, and he was terrified, and he started crying, and my brother was like, what did you do to my little boy? And it was not exactly what I had hoped it would be.
I loved that cow so much. That was my favorite cow.
Of course it was.
One of my fondest memories of Ryan was when he was just a couple months old, and he would cry at night, and Latricia was completely worn out from taking care of him during the day and stuff. And so I would sit up, I would go grab him from his crib, and we had a rocking chair, and I would put him on my shoulder, and I would just rock him to sleep for, it could be an hour or longer, that I would just sit there rocking him gently in my arms. And it is one of those things that I remember often. It was one of the sweetest moments of my life, and some of the sweetest moments of my life. I'm always touched when I think about those moments.
The fondest memory of Ryan was one summer when he came to Phoenix to spend a couple of weeks with us, and we were mowing the grass in the backyard, and he really wanted to help, and he would help me empty the grass into the trash can. And after we were finished emptying it, he would run in the house and wash his hands because he didn't like the feeling of grass on his hands. And we just laughed and laughed about that. As the day went on, he helped me in doing lots of different things, and it's something I'll always remember, and I'll miss him very much.
I've just had so many amazing moments with Ryan where I've had the best time with him. It's amazing to be able to call him my cousin. And I love him so much, and I will miss him dearly.
I remember when Ryan was born, and I would go out to New England so many times the first couple of years of his life. It was so awesome to see him. He was such a beautiful little baby. And I remember when he first started saying Aunt Retta, and it was just such a specific way that he would say it that would just melt my heart. And even into adulthood, he would still say it in a way that just always affected me. I loved Ryan so much, and I'm going to miss him so much.
I love talking to Cousin Ryan during Christmas time, and I loved him very much. And I loved hearing what he was up to, and I'll just miss him very much.
My fondest memory of Ryan was when he was in Phoenix, and we were at the Talos house, and I think we were just in my room talking about really nothing in particular, about what we wanted to be when we grew up, about how class was. And I remember in that moment was when I realized he really was my peer role model growing up. He was somebody who I wanted to be like when I grew up, because he was a little bit older than me. And that's when I established that really go-to attitude to set the foundation for who I wanted to be when I grew up. So no matter what happened in the end, he always was a role model to me, and he was a very big part of who I am now.
I think one of the best memories I have of Ryan was when he celebrated his 6th birthday. I think it was his 6th. And he always had a fascination with limousines, and he would always point them out. So for his 6th birthday, we rented a limousine, and we didn't tell him. And we had some of his friends, and we had them all standing out in the front yard. And we had him looking down the street, and we said, "Ryan, what is that?" And he said, "Oh, it's a limousine." I said, "Isn't that cool?" And he's like, "Yeah." And so he kept looking at it, and it got slower, and then it turned into our driveway, and his eyes were as big as saucers, and he was so excited that he couldn't believe that that limousine was pulling into his driveway. And so his birthday was that we loaded his friends in the limousine. We took a drive through his school parking lot, and then we took all of them in the limousine to McDonald's through the drive-through, and they got burgers, and they got to watch video in the limousine and open gifts. And it was I think, one of his best birthday presents ever.
Ryan's the one person in my life that's made a huge lasting impact. As soon as I met him, I fell in love with his energetic spirit, his acceptance of everyone around him no matter who they were, his extremely outgoing personality, and his ability to make everyone around him laugh in any situation. He's the only person I've ever known that you can sit and talk to for hours and never ever run out of things to talk about. I'll always remember all the years we spent together exploring every mountain in North Georgia, every park, watching movies together, going to concerts, driving around aimlessly, singing every Beatles song on his iPod together, him teaching me how to drive, every stupid little thing that you could think of, me and him did together. Ryan was so caring and empathetic, and his ability to know what you're thinking with just a look, and his ability to make you laugh till your stomach hurt, and his passion for those he loved is one of the rarest qualities you could ever find in another human. Ryan was my best friend for the past 7 years, and he truly showed me how to love another person unconditionally with the love that he showed me. I'll always love Ryan, and his impact on me and others will literally last a lifetime.
Ryan and I met each other sophomore year in computer class. One day, he thought it would be funny to print 200 color copies of the Yellow Submarine album cover from my computer. Needless to say, the teacher was pretty pissed off and told us both if we didn't bring in packs of paper for her the next day that she was going to give us both ISS. But Ryan, being the sweetheart that he was, remembered to save me one of the copies before she shredded them all. So, thanks, Ryan.
I used to help Ryan with some of the vehicles that he owned as he came to driving age. And he didn't have a lot of money like most young folks, so the vehicles that he got were kind of interesting. I remember this one. It was like a baby blue Geo Prism. It had 3 cylinders on it. It was so tiny. The wheels were ridiculous looking on it. It reminded me of a roller skate. I could barely fit in the driver's seat to actually work on some of the parts. But there wasn't a thing that was working correctly on this car. I think he got it for $500. And we had to spend the next 2 or 3 weeks just repairing the engine, the headlights, the brake lights, the transmission, the clutch. I mean, it was just, it was a mess. But for those 3 weeks where we'd work on that car, we spent some very meaningful time together that I very much enjoyed.
Young, but we went to Collinsville Aquatic Center. We found this little spot there that we used to try to skateboard, but we both sucked at it, and I think we both knew that. So we went there, and we were going out from behind this black SUV that was on our left. We'd skate out from behind it, get up speed to go up this little walkway, and then do whatever stupid crap we were doing. And it was my turn, and I went just as hard as I could, pushed as hard as I could, and as soon as I got out from behind the SUV, Honda Element smacked me right on my left side. I ended up on the hood and then on the ground. And the first thing I remember seeing is I looked over at him, and I was expecting him to come running, and he was just cracking up. And I think that is a legitimate summary of how our friendship is.
Impression.
He was smooth. That was my first impression. Ryan, me and Ryan, our relationship was always just so cool. He always had like this cool demeanor, joking, smiling. His smile is like absolutely contagious. But my first impression was just like, this guy is too cool. Like, there's nobody that can have this much coolness or swag about themselves. I'm truly gonna miss you. And that smile.
Ryan is charming, just like you. That's the thing that I will always remember about him. Is his swagger and his charm that he has, and he always was, love you, Tawanda, even if it was just on the telephone. He just had that thing about him that's going to be so missed.
One of my favorite memories of Ryan, a couple actually, are some of his favorite foods and his special experiences with those foods. First of all, we always loved watermelon, and we always made sure that we got to share the first watermelon of the season, which is really fun, and he and I would eat pretty much all of the watermelon in like 2 days. The second memory was Ryan's passion for Schwann's root beer float popsicles. And it was a seasonal food, so when they came out for the summer, he was ecstatic. And the first time he learned that they were seasonal and they were no longer available after a certain time, he got so upset, he went online to their website and wrote them a scathing letter. So before he left us, fortunately, they came back in season and Ryan got to enjoy 2 full boxes of Schwann's root beer float popsicles.
Obviously, I'm going to always remember Ryan, and I'm always going to be sad when I think of Ryan, just because he was a great kid. I mean, he was a great guy, and just in general, he was a beautiful baby. He was intelligent. He was charming. I mean, people just thought he was like one of the most charming kids that they'd ever seen. But he was also, it was sad because he had this spell that he was under of drugs, and it was always a struggle. And I know it was a struggle for him. I know that he didn't want it to be that way. I know that he wanted a different life. He wanted to have a different life. And so I will remember that struggle. And I know that he struggled a great deal with this. But I'll also remember the good stuff. I'll remember shooting pool with him, with me and Hunter and Ryan, and I remember singing Albuquerque and in the cars when we were initiating new people into our little guys group. I remember just, talking to him and just, again, seeing the intelligence and the caring. I mean, he was a very caring guy. You could tell that he really cared for other people. And sometimes he would not do the best thing for other people because of this spell that he was under. But you could tell that he always regretted that too. And he wanted to do right by people. He wanted to do right by everyone else. And so I'm going to remember him with love, and he'll always, be in my heart. I love you, Ryan.
The thing that I remember most about Ryan is the smile that he would give you whenever we would come across each other, whether it be for youth group or he'd come to play bass on Sunday, or just he'd come to church on Sunday morning and I'd come over to his house to help him out. Hi, Mr. Dan, how are you today? And he had this giant smile, and I'm okay, Ryan, how are you? He'd always respond, I'm great. And the smile was just so contagious. He generally coupled it with a handshake that was just this firm, confident handshake that he would give you, and it just it gave you this feeling of joy, of happiness, just in that smile that he would give you. And that's probably what I will remember the most about Ryan, is his smile.
What I loved most about Ryan was how genuine and kind he was. You could always count on Ryan to be a shoulder to cry on when you needed to cry, and a total goofball when you needed to laugh. I remember the first day I moved to Athens and I called Ryan crying because I was so homesick, and he said, "Come get me." So I did, and Ryan stayed with me my first weekend in Athens. When we were leaving to take him back home, he said he wanted to go to Kroger, and he stocked me up full of ramen noodles and frozen pizza. And even though he knew that my parents would buy me food, he just wanted to do something that he knew was going to make me feel at home again. That's how I'll always remember Ryan, just being my best friend and being kind and good to everyone.